are now talking about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sword of Destiny, released in 2016. It's currently streaming on Netflix. I was completely enthralled. I'm sorry that we waited this long to watch this movie. It was great from start to finish. Very reminiscent of a swashbuckling adventure. Michelle Yeoh's character reprises her role, and in this particular movie, she's come back to mourn her old teacher and to also help guard the
Green Destiny.
Destiny.
It was sort of like the Excalibur MacGuffin in this story, anyway.
Everyone wants it.
Yes.
Yeah, apparently it's like the most amazing sword that's ever been created, and I guess
the person that wields
who wields it is generally unbeatable
if they're worthy.
If they have the skill, if they have the skill to wield it, that is. And also, I'm guessing it's sort of seen like almost like a status symbol for becoming the head of the martial world. They kept referring to the martial world.
Right.
I guess that just means like who's got the strongest following, because there seemed to be like there was the West Lotus, who were the bad guys, and then there was the Iron Way,
right, which
were the good guys.
Right. Well, I think because of the legend of the sword, it's almost like Excalibur, right? You know, he who wields it has immense power, and if it's a hero that's worthy of the sword, then they're pretty much indestructible. So I think Hades wanted it because he figured, he had years experience and was probably a good fighter. I mean, he seemed like he wasn't really losing to a lot of people there.
He certainly killed a bunch of people.
Exactly. So I think he probably thought that his power or his
authority would be more absolute if he wielded this
sword.
Amazing sword.
Yes, the Green Destiny.
Didn't the witch tell him that? He thought it was destroyed for thousands of years. What?
No. Everybody knew that the sword still existed.
Yeah, well, that old man did. No. Hades died, thought it was lost, and the witch told him it was hidden.
Right. Yes. So, in a way, Olive's right. I mean, I think...
But it wasn't thousands of years.
It wasn't thousands of years, right? I mean, it just went missing for...
it was probably like maybe...
20 years or something.
15 years prior, 20 years prior that,
Yeah. But still, she makes a valid point. So, what did you think, G? What did you think of the movie?
I thought that it was really, really good.
Who was your favorite character?
Silver Dart something.
Girl.
Silver Dart Chi?
Yes. And my least favorite part was when she died.
Yes, that was
spoilers.
Oh yes,
damn.
Spoilers. That's okay. We'll put a little caveat there.
Yeah, let's try and leave out spoilers if we possibly can.
Okay.
Also, in case you're a parent with little kids, like we have little kids, this is a martial arts movie. There is
tons of fighting and
killing,
and it's rated PG-13. So
I thought it was rated TV 14.
I don't know.
According to IMDb, it's PG-13,
which is roughly TV 14.
Yeah.
But there's no dismemberments or anything. It's
and there's no sexual content.
No sexual content. It's pretty bloodless. I mean, there's hardly any blood in it actually.
Right. There's not. But I mean, there's tons of killing in it.
Oh, there's tons of killing.
Yeah, but yes, it's not graphic violence.
Well, what about when she killed that dark girl? Her blood was on the sword.
We're trying not to spoil anything, okay? You could just say.
It's okay.
You could just say.
Listen,
they killed one of the.
We can discuss. Yes. We can discuss.
Major characters are killed.
Yes.
Or supporting characters. Anyway.
People that you don't want to.
Yes.
Get it.
Olive, what did you like about the movie? Or did you like the movie? I don't know.
I liked the movie.
You did? Okay. Well, what did you like about it?
I don't know.
Oh, that's the answer we love to hear. I don't know. Did you like any specific character?
Yes, I did.
Who did you like the best?
I think I liked that girl that's always plays with the boy.
The girl that got
Snow.
Yes, she was sort of like the hidden sort of like one of the protagonists of the movie. I would say after Michelle Yeoh and Donnie Yen, they were sort of like the A story, and then there was the story of Snowvase and Wei Fang, who had the B story of the thing. What about you?
I loved it. I'm kind of mad at myself that we hadn't seen this before. I'm a huge lover of action movies, definitely martial arts movies. This ticked off a lot of boxes for me. The fight choreography in the movie was great. A lot of the sword play, very well done. I always like action movies where you can actually see the action and it's not blurred and it flows nicely. I think with a lot of martial arts movies, there's this movement. It's almost dance-like. So a lot of the fight choreography in this is pleasing to the eye, shows up really well. The director here did an amazing job tying in those aspects with the overall look of the movie, the set design, the layout of the shots, and the layout of the background scenes. Some of it very picturesque and beautiful.
Like especially in the beginning when she's looking up that cliff. And the bottom there, it's all like misty and mountainous.
Yes, absolutely.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Which kind of ties in with the original movie, which we haven't seen with you guys, but maybe we'll follow up with a review of that.
What original movie?
There's actually
This is a sequel.
This is a sequel to something called...
The first movie is called Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Right.
I mean, what original
The original movie is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. This is part 2
of that movie.
Although I gotta be honest, you don't need to watch the first one to enjoy this one because it doesn't. The only carryover is Michelle Yeoh and the sword. And this one's definitely more action heavy than the first one. The first one had the whole sweeping grandeur romance sort of thing going on with it.
Yeah.
With like maybe 2 or 3 good fight scenes. This was lots of fight scenes. It still had the romance aspects to it.
But it's not like people were making out.
Well, the first one didn't really have people making out either. Yeah. It was just
not like they were kissing.
Yes, it was like there was in the first one there was more emphasis on the romantic subplot. So there were like big sections of just dialogue and whatnot. They broke it up, paced it up a little bit quicker. As far as the action goes, this is it's great action. It's more of the wire fu type martial arts where people are like gliding through the air, almost like they're weightless, like they're fighting in 0 G practically. But it's gorgeous and I mean really well done. Just as good as the fight choreography in the first one.
I think I like this one a little bit more because it was more action heavy. Not that there was anything wrong with the first one, but I felt like a lot of it.
They could have thrown a couple of extra
fight scenes. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say the word dragged because it's a disservice to the first one because the first one is such a sweeping, epic, beautiful movie. But this one, I think, I really, really enjoyed. And I agree with you. I don't think that you need to see the first one to kind of get swept up into this story. We talk about storytelling. We talk about the hero's journey. The plot B that you alluded to is actually a very important component of this story because it comes back and ties the end very nicely. I'll try not to give spoilers, but I just wanted to add that definitely that sub-story comes into play and becomes an important piece to this overall film.
Yeah, I would say it becomes the focus of the movie.
Right.
So whereas you go into it thinking plot A, which is Michelle Yeoh and needing to protect the sword, and because of that putting out like basically a help wanted sign saying all those who follow the Iron Way, please come and help do this, and that brings Donnie Yen back in, who was a mysterious character, almost like he was practically wearing a cowboy hat So he almost had that sort of like man with no name mystique about him. But then, as the story progressed, you realize more and more that the focus of the story isn't really so much the sword and, the whole I want to be master of the martial world. It's more about Snow and Wei and their story and how it interconnects and how, what they find out. I mean, like you said, the hero's journey, they go on this call to adventure, and next thing you know, the thing that they thought they wanted isn't what they wanted, and they find out new things about themselves, and then they go on and complete the journey, and it's very well done, very satisfying.
Yes, and I think the pace of the movie was good. It was really good. It didn't drag. I didn't feel like it dragged in any piece. I don't feel like any of the characters were wasted. I think even like the supporting characters in the introduction, when you mentioned like they put up the want ad for helpers in this adventure, like that action sequence was really well done. The introduction of those other minor characters was really well done. Everything about this movie is absolutely gorgeous. The costumes are very specific to this period in time in ancient China. The cinematography looks a lot like a lot of old martial arts movies. The hero's journey, the quest, having this story unfolds in a way, and then I wouldn't say bait and switch, but again, to kind of like what you alluded to, the thing that you think that you wanted, but then it becomes something else. I think Wei being raised by someone and I guess owing that allegiance, but then finding out this other secret story, how his whole perspective changes. And I think we guessed what he was going to do towards the end.
Yeah.
And it was very gratifying. It was good to see that he kind of did a 180, became the man he could be and will eventually become. He's a person that walks in the light, which I think is something that Michelle Yeoh's character also alluded to, that there was like a good in him.
Yeah, there had to be a reason they kept him in that cage for so long. Was there anything for anybody that you felt could have been a little bit better?
No.
No, you were satisfied with it 100%? I mean, aside from your favorite character.
Yep.
Okay, what about?
I wouldn't, again, like sometimes, having been a film student, you watch movies, and I think with more of a critical eye, sometimes when I watch movies, I look at the lighting or, the way shots are laid out or the way dialogue is written. I think people like us are super critical about stuff like that. But I think in this particular film, I couldn't find a flaw. I'm sure people disagree with that. I'm sure there is a contingent of people that feel like this isn't as worthy as the first one, but I don't necessarily agree. I think it's, like you mentioned, I think it's its own set piece. It's beautifully done. The story is simple, yet moves at a pace that's good. There didn't seem to be any drag. All the characters, nobody's wasted, even if, they don't have a lot of screen time. I think everything in the story serves a purpose and is utilized to get that story to progress. So I myself wouldn't have changed anything. What about you, Olive? Nothing would be changed.
If I could do anything, I would maybe give a little bit more meat or backstory to some of the bad guys. Like Mantis was destroying everyone. She was probably the toughest character in that movie outside of like Michelle Yeoh and Donnie Yen or whatever. And I would have liked to have known a bit more about her. Hades Dai, he was, you knew that he wanted to be, what he wanted. He pretty much got what was on the label. He was the bad guy or whatever. But also Mei Fang, what was his name? Wei Fang's teacher,
Silver
Crow. He didn't really get much there wasn't really much to know about him other than he, for some reason, trained Wei Fang, which was like, why, you know.
But it was interesting because, you know, there's that scene where there's the fight between the three of them, and I think it's almost like representative of a father-son relationship.
I felt that there was this father-son relationship between them, but it didn't really, I don't know, like.
Well, there's that scene towards the beginning, which was very nicely done, and I think very subtle. It played very subtle, where Hades' character is upset that Wei Fang's mission was kind of a bust, and his teacher, Silver Crow. Sorry, why do I keep saying claw? I don't know.
He had those bird claw weapons.
Yeah. So because I think Silver Crow stepped in and said, you know, it wasn't just his fault.
Said his training wasn't complete.
It wasn't complete, right? So I think that was like a nice little tidbit that got thrown in there, you know. And I think the flashback when you see him as a child and his relationship with
yeah, and that's like one of the things that threw me off a little bit, because it seemed like this Silver Crow he seemed like a decent man,
right?
You know, in fact, he was, you know, you find out later that he's, you know, when the blind witch sort of like mentally talks to Wei Fang
in his sleep, I think?
She basically says, you know, get the sword or
he's gonna
die.
Right.
And I think that's what gives him pause, you know, to go and to instead of just escaping, to, you know, try and get the sword.
But I think by this point he also knew the big secret. So I think he was motivated by other things at that point.
And then Silver Crow, you know, there's the big battle, and I don't know, I felt like there was something more should have been said about that relationship, because the results of where everybody ends up, there's some baggage that these characters are going to have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't want to give stuff away, but you know, you're riding along the beach and you're looking at this guy in front of you, and you know, there's got to be some dark thoughts going on.
No, I mean, I think it comes back to what Michelle Yeoh said. You know, there's goodness in him.
Yeah.
And I think once he realized that these people weren't, I think it's funny because like watching.
Was Silver Crow bad? Well, they didn't show him being bad.
No, but he had allegiance to somebody who was bad, and I think that he walked this path.
True. But you know what?
And that, like, I'm watching the movie, and it's almost like being in a gang. You know what I mean? Yeah. You swear your allegiance to a gang in good times and in bad times, and then sometimes they do stuff that you don't like, but you sort of stay with it because it's sort of like your family.
True.
So I think that I don't think Silver Crow had an option here. This is the way his life was. I think that Wei Fang was different because he was still young, so he could still kind of rewrite his own destiny in a way, right?
Right, but the only, like, what I'm saying is you can't have Silver Crow he can't be a character you find sympathy. And I think what they could have done in that respect was, remember there was like the scene where Hades, he basically obliterates some smaller faction. It was like Red Desert or whatever the hell they were called. Have, you know, Silver Crow and Mantis. I think they even showed Mantis like slaughtering people in that case. You know, she was badass. She was bad.
Yeah.
She was a killer.
Yeah.
Have that guy doing it too. Because otherwise, he just sort of looks like an older guy with gray hair who really cared for this boy. And it's sort of like, I don't want to see this guy die, you know?
But you knew he had to.
Yeah.
I mean,
there
was no doubt in my mind that that's what was going to happen.
Yeah.
He sort of sacrifices himself for the young buck, right? I mean, it's almost reminiscent of Guardians of the Galaxy. Yondu's relationship with Quill.
But you want that sympathy, right? That's what the story is supposed to be going for. In this case, you don't. This is a bad guy. He deserves to die. You know, when he was raising that kid, he should have been like beating the crap out of him. And it was just like when they show his childhood, it's just like, you're learning.
Yeah.
Good job.
Right.
Do it again. There was nothing, negative about Silver Crow.
Well, I mean, I think we have like time constraints, so they can't really do all of that. But I get the impression that
what, you could do a lot in a little time.
True, but I think that their focus was more on other aspects of this movie. I mean, it could have been longer. I think IMDb put it at 96 minutes. I mean, it could have been longer, but I think it was just right, because you don't want too much either. And I think that this also leaves a lot open to interpretation. I think that that's one of the nice things about movies like this, where it's like, you know what? You come up with your own backstory. You figure it out. What happened in those 15, 20 years from the first movie to this movie. I like that there's like this element of not being fed everything. And I think that in this case it works because, again, the whole relationship about those two, I think, was he's sort of like a surrogate father to this kid, right? He basically he's his father. Yeah. He raised this kid from infancy.
Yeah.
I mean, the concubine brought him to Hades as a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's basically this kid's father, and he was willing to sacrifice his life.
Right. Well, all I'm saying is that gives him a level of sympathy that you don't want for a bad guy.
Yeah, possibly. But he's not the main bad guy.
I know he's not the head.
He's probably just doing his job.
I know that. But the problem is when you get a bad guy and you try and give him some level of sympathy, you want like a turn or something.
Mm-hmm. An explanation.
Or like escape, like the whole thing where he made him escape, or he told him, run.
Run, right.
But he was still telling him to run to the bad guy, finish your mission. It wasn't just, leave because this guy is going to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
It was leave because I want you to finish the damn mission.
Right. But this is their way. They're part of this.
I know.
Group, this is what they do.
I understand, but I feel like there could have been some really minor tweaks in there that could have made me not think, I'm kind of sad that this guy's dad is dead. And I'm sorry, I'm spoiling the fact that Silver Crow dies, but Silver Crow dies. And then you're just sort of like, he's dead. We know he's dead. We know who killed him. And Fang is sort of like, my dad's dead.
I totally get your point, but for me, it didn't bother me, I think, because it was like, oh, that's too bad, but just keep going, because I think that
it didn't bother me to the point where I hated this movie or anything like that. No, not at all. I mean, no film I've seen is 100% perfect, but this sort of dropped it down a couple of percentage points just because it's something that I noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But otherwise, it was fantastic. I enjoyed everything about it.
Yeah, I mean, that part, I get what you're saying, but to me, it didn't really bother me. Although, I do agree with you about the Mantis thing, and I hope that if they ever decide to revisit the story, everyone's so into doing these prequels, I'd love to see how she got involved with this crazy crew.
Yeah,
I thought she was a very interesting character, and it's
and like you could see that even the bad guy was just like, have Mantis do it.
Right.
Because he knew that if she had done it, she would have just destroyed everybody.
Right, yeah. So her character was interesting, even though she really didn't get a lot of airplay. So yeah, I agree with you on that in that respect. I'd love, if Netflix ever decides to foot the bill for another one of these, maybe a prequel on Mantis.
I want to ask you a question though. That ending with Mantis, do you think the sort of like the aftermath, do you think they sort of like meant to do it one way, go a little bit darker, and then they were just like, no, we can't end it like that. We got to give it a happy ending.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Do you think that was...
I love that you're trying not to give spoilers. I don't know. I think that's an interesting question, because it definitely, I mean, when we were watching it, you heard our reaction where we're just like, no! I don't know. I don't know what the intention was there. I don't know if it was originally supposed to end one way, but then didn't. It could have played either way. I think if it had gone the way that we assumed it was going to go, it would have been more devastating. But the ending that we got was good. It was good and satisfying, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
But I was like, in a chunk of my mind was sort of like,
was this some suit that got involved?
Was sort of like, was like
this.
Some executive producer was like, nah, right off into the sunset.
Again, you know what? It could have played either way in my mind. It would have still been a great ending either way. It's funny when you mention, I hadn't thought of that, but it's interesting when you read about movies after the fact and when studio executives get involved who aren't film people for the majority of it, right? They're just lawyers. Money guys. They're lawyers or
accountants,
or money guys. You know, they're investors. So they don't have a love of film or storytelling. They're just more in it for the bottom line. And, you know, it has its place, obviously. I mean, if you invest money in a project, you want it to be successful. But I think it's also great when artists, directors, screenwriters are given that luxury of failing in a way, you know, and allowed to really commit to their art, you know. And again, I think this movie could have ended either way, and I would have been fine with either ending. It was nice the way it ended, though, I think.
Okay, overall, what would you give it?
I would give it an 8.25. I'm going to steal from Jay and give it 8.25.
What would you give it, Ala?
9.5.
9.5? Wow. That's you, G. Alright, why don't you go brush your teeth?
It's definitely in the higher numbers. So I'd probably give it like an 8 or a 9. Or maybe even a 10.
Perfect movie? It's possibly perfect movie? Okay.
Nice.
I'd give it an 8. Solid 8.
Solid 8. Very, very well crafted. Good storytelling. Excellent elements as far as cinematography, set design, costumes.
Fight choreography?
I was just going to mention the fight choreography is really, really good. And I am a huge believer in that stuff being clear so that you can see it. And I think in this movie, it's very clear. And it's done very, very well.
All right. So that was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sword of Destiny.
Which is streaming right now on Netflix. Please